For more than 30 years, 111 Minute Gallery has supported local artists, musicians, DJs, comics, and performers in their bar/art gallery/performance space. It's the perfect place to go for a quiet drink during their happy hours, where you can bring your date and show them that you're in on all those cool spots that only locals know about. 111 Minute also opened their coffee shop if you need a third space to do your work outside the office. Or you can treat yourself to a night at one of their dance parties, gallery openings, or comedy nights, and meet some of the people who make this city so amazing. So if you're one of those people like me, who want to see a healthy, happy, vibrant San Francisco, you can help do so by keeping places like 111 Minute alive and thriving. Check out their website at 111minutegallery.com and browse all that they're doing on their calendar.
All of my worldview and philosophy has come from my heritage and what I've learned about it, and also the way I grew up, going back to the start of this, where it's really about making sure everyone has what they need to live a dignified life.
That was Jackie Fielder, activist and candidate for District 9 Supervisor. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make our city unique. This episode is part 2 with Jackie. We chatted at Evil Eye on Mission back in September about Jackie's life in San Francisco, her run for state senator in 2020, and her campaign this year for District 9 Supervisor. If you haven't voted yet, please do so, up and down the ballot. Here's Jackie.
Yeah, so to be supporting a black woman for office who is so qualified, has such an amazing story, is literally a MacArthur genius, was such an honor. And she tasked me with writing this, I don't know, like a memo, but I, being me, the policy nerd, I just ran with it. And I got so interested into the stats and the data and, the racial disparities, of course. The reforms had been community ambassadors navigating the BART. And, a civilian oversight board that was kind of not fulfilling the original vision.
I'll say half-ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I basically got into politics and became interested in governance, especially in San Francisco.
Did you know that maybe somewhere in your schooling or somewhere in your upbringing, you might have figured out that you have a capacity to hold? Because when we start talking about policy,
yeah,
not everyone can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of us just know how we feel and what we think about the world, but when it gets into the weeds, no, it's the policies that tick me off. Yeah,
that get me going.
Right,
and it's kind of the politics is a means to an end.
Right.
The end being actual material changes to people's lives. And I'm in the weeds because that is where the rest of us are screwed over. Whether that's indigenous communities, whether that is working class people of any background, that is continuously where we get stuck because we take the sound bites, we take the promises, and we don't see change because, I don't know, everyone is very spread thin, especially in San Francisco. We have so many fronts when it comes to public safety, homelessness, housing, education. It's you can't have a lawyer with you alongside you in every single little policy fight or campaign, and that's tough. That said, in 2016, I was planning to apply to law school. I was studying for the LSAT at the same time as I was volunteering for Lateefah. But then Donald Trump got elected.
Yeah. When you brought up that year, I was like,
yeah,
are we going to talk about that?
So I was feeling...
In fact, I'm going to edit his name out of this.
So I was feeling so... I don't know, just
that day,
so excited for Lateefah, especially, and just just, that was really what I cared about was the local level. And then the federal stuff just completely, I was sobbing and I just went home.
Yeah.
So disappointed.
Yeah. That was an
Bummed
inflection
out.
point.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're out of it. I don't think we're out of it.
No, sadly.
Can't fucking wait till we're out of it. But
So,
anyway,
I
but
said,
Lateefah won. Am I
yeah,
right?
she won.
Okay.
But it was just like,
was that the bittersweet thing?
yeah, exactly.
That,
it was just like, oh God, but this cannot be happening.
Right.
And I decided, if the president of the United States doesn't know the law, why would I study the law? It just seemed like
That's
it was gonna be
helplessness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was gonna be endless. I don't know, just kind of like just being stuck in the weeds, and the weeds being the structures, they're so set up to benefit who they're meant to benefit. So, yeah, I didn't actually really know what to do then. I mean, that's when Standing Rock happened. Same time, the worst of it, I think, happened in November and December.
Of 2016.
Yeah, and I was also disillusioned because it was President Obama that approved the, basically said that they would have an environmental impact statement, but it really didn't mean anything because then Trump would be in office.
Right.
And he would just let it go.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, what next? I mean, seeing people who looked like me, people who were my relatives, facing down the barrel of guns. I mean, watching that through my phone screen, feeling super helpless, wanted to go out there, so I did. Went a couple days, and I went on a really bright, sunny winter day. There was snow all over the ground. It was gorgeous, and it was just a sea of tents and dozens of tribal flags along the dirt road that you go to enter the camp, and spent some time there with some people, some young people, had really deep, pretty intense conversations about like reservation life, what this fight meant to them. It brought a ton of hope, by the way, and youth suicide on reservations decreased because so many youth got involved and started to see like a future for themselves. So that is a really core, I think, call for me, is to continue that thread of hope and to have something to fight for, because that's how my people have continued. That's how any of us have continued. And so, I think I've had my fair share of nihilist years and seasons. But I do feel like it's possible in community to have that hope. And if you're alone, it's much harder to have that.
And Standing Rock really taught you that?
Absolutely. And I think that manifested in me being like, okay, well, let's keep it going. And I saw in Seattle these organizers leading a divestment campaign to get their city to break up their ties with Wall Street. I got in touch with them. I said, let's do it in San Francisco.
Was that Occupy or?
This
was way after Occupy, actually.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, all good. But,
again, no capacity to keep it all.
Definitely like riding the waves of Occupy, because it was only, like 8 years after.
Right.
So there was still this thread of, and like unfinished business with the Occupy movement to holding banks accountable. And here they were, once again, screwing over our communities.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was 2016.
Yeah, going into 2017.
Going into 17.
February.
Yeah. Yep.
And
dark times, but a thread of
dark times,
of
and I was
intense
just,
hope.
Yeah. I was, I guess at that point, 22.
Right.
So, full of energy, full of like, let's just do it.
I'm just going to say, a baby.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's when I started to learn about what the Board of Supervisors is. Okay. Because...
Were you living in SF at the time?
Starting to.
Okay.
We'll get into this later about like my different renter and van life experiences.
Okay.
But
Yes, we will. Yeah.
But yeah, working in SF and wanting to get our city to divest from the Wall Street banks.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we founded the San Francisco Public Bank Coalition, because there were no alternatives big enough because credit unions were too small. We were like, okay, well, I guess we have to build a bank. And
Still going strong.
Yeah.
By the way, right?
Yeah.
Public
It's
bank,
tremendous work.
Yeah.
Since then, we have passed the first public bank law in the nation. That was a huge statewide organizing effort that the San Francisco Public Bank Coalition was a part of. Shout out to Boylet SF, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Sylvia Chi, co-author, and we roped in David Chu to be a co-author. Even Scott Wiener, I think, was a co-author, maybe.
Interesting.
There's a lot that happened since then, but I think, like, to summarize, between 2017 and 2019, basically, like, trying to find... I went out to the Dakotas to reconnect with my kind of roots. Mm-hmm. Got connected to amazing indigenous organizers, leaders, going back to even the American Indian movement. Spent some time in Minnesota, actually, doing a lot of fishing and connecting with
I love that.
indigenous folks out there, fighting
Yeah.
the Line 3 pipeline. Even, like, volunteered at a Wild Buffalo Field Campaign, which is a kind of like a buffalo watchdog org in Yellowstone. And then 2018 happens, and I was out traveling on the road and back in San Francisco. But in 2018, I was just like, well, I think it's time to, like, finally like, do something again that's gonna be a big help to San Francisco, because I did want to do that reconnecting, but I knew that San Francisco was where I was kind of meant to come back to.
Do you want to dig into that more?
Yeah, I mean, in 2018, I was asked to lead the campaign against the SFPOA's use of force measure. Mm-hmm. They wanted to write their own use of force policy around tasers, and I led that campaign alongside Democratic Socialists of America, San Francisco, and ACLU of Northern California. Built a scrappy, big tent coalition called No on H, and we were shocked, but we defeated it handily.
Yes. I'll just say thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you to everyone who helped out. It was certainly a team effort, but that felt really good to have a win, and, you know, police accountability, going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, and Standing Rock, where I saw, again, people who looked like me, my own relatives, facing down the barrel of guns, all in service of a fossil fuel corporation. And, you know, in San Francisco, there are also the cases of Alex Nieto, Luis Gongora Pat, Mario Woods, that I found unjust, that those officers were not held accountable. And, you know, there's only really been ever one officer held accountable, and that was Johannes Meserly. For Oscar Grant. So, yeah, it was...
We had a DA for a hot second that was trying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to get into that.
So, that definitely changed things for the political dynamics of San Francisco, at least for a little bit. And it was also the year that a lot of progressives won.
In 18.
Yeah. Some of whom have since changed teams, but felt really good. I also was teaching at SF State because going back to my foundation job at a college, I had met Alicia Garza, co-founder of Black Lives Matter, and she was asking people on Facebook, does anyone want to teach my class at SF State, race woman class, for like a class? And I said, yeah, I'll pop in. I'll teach a lesson about the Dakota Access Pipeline, indigenous rights. At that point, I had also gone on an indigenous women's delegation to Europe to basically tell the banks over there to stop financing fossil fuel pipelines in indigenous territories without our consent. But so
you said you'd been interested in education. Was this your first time to teach, though?
First time teaching at S7E2 State.
How was that?
I didn't even know that she wanted me to teach the class.
Oh.
But she said, no, teach the class, the whole class. I said,
like a semester.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was
homework and grades.
Yeah.
And
all of that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And mind you, at this point, I'm 24.
Right.
Starting.
Did you have students who were older than you?
I think there was a couple.
Maybe a couple, yeah, sure.
But, showed up in my blazer and tried to have a very fair system of grading, try to provide structure, but also try to allow for different modes of learning. Because I know for me, it was really a slog to get through all the reading in Stanford for the different classes.
Yeah.
I did it, but it was hard, especially because I did not know at that time that I had undiagnosed ADD. It's not treated now anyway. I just exercise and I try to stay super organized. Have many alarms for pretty much every minute of the day. Yeah.
Well, you're a busier person than me, but me too.
yeah. It's necessary. But
and calendars
anyway,
are super helpful.
Yeah, so I live by the calendar. I live by alarms.
Calendars and notifications.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Something I'm looking forward to after the campaign. Just having a little stint of time.
Nothing.
Where I don't have to look at my calendar.
Win or lose.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
I'm wishing that for you.
Thank you. Teaching at SF State was a blessing. Feel very honored to have done it in the race and resistance studies program in the College of Ethnic Studies. And I also was working like restaurant jobs.
Okay, so I guess let's hear about 2020. So you'd worked on a ballot measure campaign, and you had worked for someone running for BART board.
Yeah.
You had not run for yourself for an elected office.
No. So I was kind of, again,
that was your bad street. That was when you became a bad, like, you're like, I got to get it out of my system.
Yeah.
No,
totally.
let's hear that story.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I was not really sure what I was doing. I was teaching at SF State, working service jobs, just kind of like I don't know, I think a lot of people my generation, especially, I'm noticing a lot of my friends too from similar backgrounds, like working class, where there's these high expectations that you become a doctor, a lawyer, something. And if you're not that, it's kind of like you're just like searching in the dark, like trying to understand what you're doing. And I think there's a lot of weight on that. So I was trying to kind of counteract that and just be like, well, I'm just gonna work in service. And I really wanted to work with my hands. I was pretty tired of laptop work. And I was, interested in like cocktails and wanted to just kind of have a different experience for a minute. And
did you bartend?
Yeah.
Oh, where?
I was a bar back.
Bar back.
I'm not going to name the place.
All good. I'll scratch that.
Yeah. But I was like a bar back, bartender sometimes, and server, like waitress. But it wasn't for too long, off and on. But like, I don't know, just also, I think the undiagnosed ADD too, I didn't really understand. Just couldn't really settle on anything. And I had a nagging thought that I should maybe run for office. And
did you focus group that with your friends?
but it wasn't really like a real conviction or path that I was truly set on until I saw and someone pointed out that Scott Wiener was running unopposed. And I thought that was such a disservice to the rest of us who had supported these measures like Prop C, investing in affordable housing, mental health support for unhoused people. And at that point, I had also had stints of living in my van in San Francisco, between different apartments, whether that's due to like roommates who can't clean up after themselves or just like expensive.
Affordability.
Yeah, I mean, affordability, being like, okay, you know what? I can crash on my friend's couch for this amount of time. I crash on my other friend's couch for this amount of time. I don't think people understand that that's now normal for working class people.
And that's housing insecurity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
So...
Well, the whole thing about Scott Wiener running unopposed in 2020, he didn't run unopposed in 2016.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned Jane Kim.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how close it was. I'll go on record. I was not.
I think it was pretty close.
I was on Team Jane Kim.
Oh, me too.
100%.
Yeah.
So was that encouraging as far as the I could do this?
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was. Honestly, it was just like I was indignant that no one was running.
There was no one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, why not?
Well, this is when you entered my sphere of knowing about you.
Yeah.
Was that so?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was still teaching at SF State for a little bit, and then the pandemic hit. So we had this momentum for the months of November to March 3rd, and then the pandemic hit, and then it was like lockdown. And that was a bummer, but then I was like, okay, now I'm a YouTube host, and we'll just have like a weekly virtual show?
Yeah.
I don't know. So weird.
We'll pivot.
Yeah. So a ton of Zoom phone banks. Shout out to anyone who's phone banking for me at that time, because that was something.
Yeah.
Everything was digital. That's when I basically lived on social media and put out all my policy things there. So, yeah, I mean, given the circumstances, given also how much money we were against, I raised $750,000, which is insane. The limit for that race is $4,700. And... Yeah. And, yeah, that was just nuts. Don't know. I honestly don't. If I had known what was all involved, probably wouldn't have done it, because it was a ton of fundraising. Candidates, it is not a glamorous life.
Right.
It's slogging through fundraising phone calls.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you are running a local race, voter calls, and those can be entertaining. Those are great. You get to talk with real people, but the fundraising calls is really hard, especially for someone like myself who has a really hard time asking for help. But that campaign, it's just, it wasn't about me. It was about the bigger issues at hand.
Yeah.
Affordable housing, climate change, renters' rights, homelessness, education. And Scott Wiener and I were pretty opposite on most of those issues. Yeah.
You ran to the left of Scott Wiener.
Yeah, I had the backing of teachers. I had the backing of ironworkers, electricians, tenants' rights groups, affordable housing groups, various progressive cultural affinity groups in the city, Harvey Milk Democratic Club. So, yeah, it was a very... Again, if I had known what was all involved, I probably wouldn't have done it, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And I think that really is, again, a youthful decision.
Yeah.
And feels like eons ago, but I am grateful for all the people that volunteered and worked on the campaign, especially through those dark pandemic days of just uncertainty and us just having to pivot endlessly, and then we got 43% of the vote. But
amazing.
Yeah, for first time citywide plus, because it was San Francisco plus Daly City plus Colma, South San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah.
Goofy shaped gerrymandered
and for
districts.
a grassroots corporate free campaign, I mean, it's pretty good.
43 is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I voted for
thank
you.
Thank you.
For listeners who don't know, you did not come out on top.
Yeah.
You're not. We're not currently in Sacramento.
No.
But here we are. So, how is this different?
Well,
talk about the decision to do this.
I will say there's there's always a silver lining. Looking at other progressives in Sacramento, it's just like yelling at a brick wall. And right now, our governor is blaming cities for not dealing with homelessness in the way that he thinks, which is sweeping them from county to county, which is literally what's happening now. San Francisco and Humboldt County are in a war about busing people to and from each place.
Well, and I know our current mayor signed on to the Supreme Court case. Did the governor as well?
Brief, yeah.
Did he sign on as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I got to just have a life, and I took a step back from politics, got into therapy, which was amazing.
Yay, therapy.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
And learned about self-care and self-compassion. And just really being there for myself, making sure that I'm taken care of so then I can care for others, because it's really just, it's not possible to, what's the phrase? Pour from an empty cup.
Also, on airplanes, it's put the mask on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
First.
Yep.
I always think of that.
Yeah. So feel very lucky to, I started a PAC too, because I was like, okay, what's next? We've got this whole big apparatus. What next? And started a PAC to support other corporate-free candidates that had the same values.
Your own PAC, or was this related to DSA, or?
Well, yeah, the separate PAC.
Your own thing. Okay.
Daybreak PAC. And the PAC supported 6 different candidates. One of them successfully unseated a Republican.
Yes.
And was very proud of that, Pilar Schiavo in Southern California.
Okay.
And she's a great labor candidate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Again.
I mean, that's all power to her. Mm-hmm. I was glad to be there in the beginning. But yeah, so proud that we did that. We also weighed in on Free Muni at the local level, which ended up becoming Free Muni for Youth. Mm-hmm. We also we used the phone banking apparatus that we had honed to connect people in the southeast part of the city with legal services for eviction, because at the time, eviction moratorium was still in place and people didn't know about it. They didn't know their options. Mm-hmm. So we got them connected to Open Door Legal. And we also fought for single-payer health care at the state level. So try to get Jim Wood, the chair of the Assembly Health Committee, to hear the bill, and texted, and I think we texted people in that district to see if they could send some letters of support. I was really proud of what we did, and then I couldn't sustain myself that way. I needed something more stable, and felt very lucky that the Defund DAPL movement had actually gotten legs and become an official coalition called Stop the Money Pipeline.
Okay.
And they asked me, they had an opening for a communications manager in spring of 2021. I applied, got it, and then I got to reconnect with all these amazing people. I had connected with these amazing organizers around the Defund DAPL movement, a lot of them in Seattle and across the country, who were very much in solidarity with, if not at the forefront of the Standing Rock movement. Mm-hmm. So that was great. And I was a communications manager. In early 2023, actually became co-director. A lot of my work had surrounded different climate regulation around finance. So basically trying to hold Wall Street banks accountable to their own climate policies. And unfortunately, due to the woke backlash, a lot of them have reneged on those promises. Yep. And the federal government has also kind of lost steam around living up to a climate mandate and a whole of government approach to climate. So that's been disappointing. I feel very honored to have worked and supported frontline communities in Minnesota, Louisiana, Texas, the Gulf Coast, largely, and Appalachia, largely Black and Indigenous frontline leaders, and was really honored to, at the end of my stint there, because 2 months ago I took a leave to campaign full time.
Okay.
But my last projects were basically capturing qualitative data and anecdotes about experiences on frontline communities across those different areas.
Do you want to talk about D9 and
Yeah.
what you want to do for
Yeah.
this area?
So, District 9, I've had the honor of living in for the majority of my time in San Francisco. Between, all the different places I've lived, this has been the place that has, to me, felt the most like home. I am queer, and that I found out after college, which was so great. No better place. And it's places like El Rio that have been such a part of my San Francisco experience. And to have a district that also contains two cultural districts, the American Indian Cultural District, the Latino Cultural District, that embraces both of my worlds.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's
It's really
amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so, the people that I encounter on the street, my neighbors, it just feels like this is where I have been meant to be. And I feel the most embraced for myself, which is so great.
And the taquerias and the weather
Totally.
don't hurt anything.
Totally, especially in the Mission. It's warmer here, so I don't complain about the weather. There's nothing to complain about.
Nope.
I love how we can walk pretty much everywhere.
So walking, yeah.
Transit, I live along, my home lines are the 14 and the 49. I can take both lines to meet a lot of my friends who live elsewhere in the city. But yeah, I feel very lucky to live here, very lucky to afford to live here. And we also have some major issues to tackle. We have public safety. People, no matter what the stats say, they are concerned for their safety. And I know what that's like as a woman, and also as someone who grew up in a low-income neighborhood. I was very much used to not feeling safe. And so it is an absolute fundamental right, I think, for people to feel safe. How we get there, we might disagree on.
Right.
So for me, it's about using law enforcement resources effectively, having them respond to emergencies, violent crimes. But then for the stuff like homelessness and substance use disorder, that stuff, it is really expensive to just cycle people in and out of hospitals. The jails are full. And also, the Grants Pass decision doesn't change anything. That's what we've been doing for decades, going back to Mayor Jordan, where
a former cop, right?
Yeah, where you would have matrices of basically shuffling people from one neighborhood to another. Sometimes it's from one block to another. And it just destabilizes people even more. It makes them more desperate.
And when you take their shit, too.
Yeah, exactly. Take their meds, take their stuff. It adds way more gasoline, I think, to the problem than necessary. And at that point, it is so expensive to deploy officers that we may as well just invest in housing and treatment. And job opportunities. The predominant cause of homelessness in San Francisco is still job loss. 60% of the people on the streets right now were SF residents. So we should be investing in the solutions that the research shows actually works. Looking at places like Houston, which has reduced their homelessness 63%.
Wow.
By getting people into housing and places of their own, getting 100+ community groups, nonprofits, government agencies that work on homelessness to say, hey, let's get onto this one plan, forget your hats at the door, just get people into the system, worry about the paperwork later, just get them into housing, get them into the system. And
Houston's a much, much bigger place.
Exactly.
Than here.
And a year later, 90% of those people are still housed.
Right.
LA is also experimenting with this and having, I think, some good success in certain pockets. And so it's especially where we have homelessness that looks so many different ways. You know, there's my experience where it's temporary. You know, I didn't have any, you know, of those really intensive issues. It was really just just like a gap in life. And I had a social support network that I could rely on here and there. But there's family homelessness. We have 1,800 homeless SFUSD students.
Right.
For me, again, the issue goes back to how are we going to help students have the best possible chance of success, whether they are children of single moms, children of undocumented families, children of, low-income families, working-class families. And public schools are the foundation of an equitable society. And a student cannot succeed if they're coming to school dysregulated, underfed, unsheltered, and, their parents are struggling to survive. If their parents are struggling to survive, they're stressed, they're not able to be present, they literally have to make these decisions to work, to get stuff done that needs to be done at home, and have to ignore their kids. And that really weighs on children who have also been enduring a pandemic.
Yeah.
So my main opponent has called me a radical and an ideologue, which I think is hilarious because all of my worldview and philosophy has come from my heritage and what I've learned about it, and also the way I grew up. Going back to the start of this,
your experience,
where it's really about making sure everyone has what they need to live a dignified life: food, housing, education, shelter, all of that, healthcare, schooling. And
I don't know, Jackie, that's pretty damn radical.
It's too radical, apparently. But this is the basic premise for indigenous societies all across the world, and certainly in my own heritage, Hidatsa and Lakota, where we never left people behind. We never let anyone go unsheltered. We took care of each other, and the same is true in my upbringing too. So in a city with several dozen billionaires, with a GDP that rivals that of Portugal, it's so obvious to me that this is an inequitable society, and there are ways to make it more equitable that are within reach if we just get organized, become unified, and recognize that no matter what race, no matter what background you come up from, we have way more in common than we do with the billionaires like Elon Musk who want to go to space. So let them go to space. They can go there. And they want to throw a temper tantrum about how San Francisco has been run when progressives haven't been in power. And it's actually been 3 decades of moderate mayors that have compounded the problems that we've had. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Do you want to end on a hopeful?
Yeah.
No, you were going hopeful until you mentioned Elon Musk.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, you mentioned the former president and Elon Musk. I might have to scratch both.
Well,
no, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
SF politics is a dumpster fire because of these people.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, other guys that they have this egotistical sense that they know what's best for our city, and so they'll just throw millions of dollars into local elections.
I was going to say, and you don't have to respond directly to this, but there's also very well-funded campaigns both against specific candidates for supervisor and against or for certain ballot measures, well-funded by billionaires and tech whatever bros and all that. But for me and everyone I know, the reality of day-to-day life on the streets in San Francisco is not that.
Yeah.
It's probably more what you experience too and what you're fighting for. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, especially this district, we have disproportionate share of the problems and burdens of living in a city with so much wealth inequality. And also, I think a lot of the hope. And for me, that it does come from my friends, my community. Our neighborhoods are so spectacular. In this whole district, Mission, Bernal, Portola, we have rich histories and legacies around community organizing, activism, basically building entire social infrastructure from the ground up. And whether that's a community garden, whether that is, community-oriented, I don't know, like SF General is just a little bit outside of our district, but that's where we honed the model for care for AIDS patients. And people like Dion Jones, Roma Guy, these legendary folks who also started the SF Women's Building, the Women's Coalition on Homelessness, they're still here and they're still around. And I feel so lucky to be even in their presence, because they are really, when you think about it, they've really they've changed the world by changing San Francisco. That's why these VCs are so intent on San Francisco. They're saying, well, if we can take San Francisco, if we can buy San Francisco, we can buy the world. Because that's how San Francisco has changed the world, too. So I will just say, I've also had my moments where I've doubted, do we really have hope in this city? Is San Francisco just sold off to the highest bidder now? But every single day I knock a door, I call a voter on the phone, I talk to a new volunteer. There's new volunteers in this campaign every single day, especially people that have not been involved in politics before, but know that this is a really big election. There's a lot at stake, and we can't afford to sit this one out. That gives me hope. That's where I draw hope, is other people. And so I will just say that we are the answer. There's no one coming to save us, for better and for worse. The people next to you are the leaders that we need for our city.
That was District 9 Supervisor candidate Jackie Fielder. We're taking election week off, but 2 weeks from today on the podcast, meet Nicole Mashali Saliver, Program Manager at Belay Creative. Episode 3 drops November 12, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Our contributing producer is Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 7th season, we have more than 220 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If possible, please, please, please rate and review the show. I want to know what you think. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at storiedsf, and reach out to us there or email us at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Be extra careful crossing the street, and keep being wacky, creative, and kind out there. See you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.